It's 11:38 p.m. You're lying in bed, not sleeping. Your thumb keeps scrolling. Another entrepreneur your age, another guy talking about discipline, another "how I made my first million at 25" video. You pause for a second. Your chest tightens. Not jealousy, not exactly. It's that quiet, heavy thought, why am I not there yet? You switch apps, you check your bank balance, you close it quickly, you tell yourself it's temporary, you say you just need the right idea, the right timing, the right connection. But deep down, you know something isn't adding up. Because this isn't the first year you've said that. It's the third, maybe the fifth. And if we're being honest, come on, man, you've had opportunities, small ones, real ones. You just didn't move. Not because you're dumb, not because you're incapable, but because every time action felt uncomfortable, you stepped back, you researched instead of starting, you planned instead of executing, you criticized instead of building, and then you distracted yourself. It felt harmless, it felt normal. Everyone does it, right? But slowly, quietly, you trained yourself to avoid the very thing that could change your life. Here's the part no one says out loud. Staying broke isn't always about money. It's about identity. Some men don't stay broke because they lack strength. They stay broke because they avoid emotional exposure. Because trying means risking humiliation. Trying means risking proof that you're not as talented as you hoped. Trying means stepping into uncertainty without guarantees. And your nervous system hates that. So it whispers, later, not now. You're not ready, and you listen. You know what's crazy? The pain of staying the same is familiar. The pain of growth is unpredictable, and the brain will almost always choose the familiar pain. So you tolerate frustration, you tolerate envy, you tolerate that quiet shame when someone asks, "So, what are you working on these days?" You give vague answers. You say you're figuring things out, but inside, you feel behind. Not broke just financially. Broke in momentum, broke in confidence, broke in self-trust. And if this feels personal, good. Because this isn't an attack, it's a mirror. This is about understanding why some men unconsciously choose safety over progress. Why they protect their ego more than their future, why they scroll instead of build. And once you see the pattern clearly, you can't unsee it. So before we talk about money, before we talk about success, let's talk about the real question. Why does your mind protect comfort more fiercely than it protects your potential? Because until you answer that, nothing changes. Imagine this. You wake up with intention. Today feels different. You tell yourself, I'm going to change something. Maybe you'll start the side project. Maybe you'll apply for that better job. Maybe you'll finally take your fitness seriously. For a moment, you feel powerful. Then, something shifts. A quiet voice enters your mind. What if this doesn't work? What if I try hard and still fail? What if people see me trying and I look stupid? It's subtle. Almost innocent, but it's enough. So instead of acting, you research more. You open another tab, watch another video, take more notes. It feels productive. It feels responsible, but hours pass and nothing actually moves. You know what I mean? It's like standing at the edge of a cold pool. You keep telling yourself you'll jump in, you even dip your toes in, but you never fully commit. Why? Because the real battle isn't about skill, it's about emotional exposure. Trying means you're visible. Trying means your effort can be judged. Trying means your identity is on the line. And if you've ever felt criticized, dismissed, or compared growing up, that exposure feels dangerous. Your nervous system doesn't register business opportunity. It registers threat. This is where the HPA axis comes in. Your body's built-in stress alarm system. When it detects danger, it releases stress hormones like cortisol. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tighten, Your thinking narrows. Thousands of years ago, this response kept you alive from predators. Today, it activates when you hit publish, or when you walk into an interview, or when you invest money into yourself. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a lion and humiliation, so it chooses safety, and safety looks like distraction. Scrolling, gaming, overanalyzing, debating ideas instead of building them. Each time you escape discomfort, you feel relief. That relief is dopamine. But here's the catch. Your brain learns from relief. Through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, it starts building a pattern. Discomfort, escape, relief. Repeat that enough times and avoidance becomes automatic, not because you're weak, but because your brain has been trained. And here's the painful part. You start confusing movement with progress. You watch financial podcasts, you follow productivity pages, you talk about big plans, but you're not actually confronting risk. There's a huge difference between consuming ambition and embodying it. Weak men don't necessarily lack dreams. They lack tolerance for the emotional friction required to chase them, and that friction feels intense when your self-worth is fragile, because failure doesn't just mean I failed. It feels like I am a failure. So to protect identity, you protect comfort. It's not laziness, it's self-protection. But self-protection, when overused, becomes self-sabotage. You end up stuck in this loop. You want more. You feel fear. You avoid action. You justify the avoidance. You repeat, and every repetition strengthens the pattern. Cognitive dissonance begins to grow, that uncomfortable tension between who you believe you could be and how you're actually behaving. To reduce that tension, you adjust the story. Money isn't everything. Rich people are corrupt. I value peace more than hustle. Some of those statements might even be partially true, but sometimes they're shields protecting you from confronting your own hesitation. Because going after more requires confronting uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like loss of control. So you stay where things are predictable, even if predictable means broke, even if predictable means frustrated, even if predictable means quietly disappointed in yourself. The internal struggle isn't about ability, it's about tolerance. Tolerance for discomfort, tolerance for uncertainty, tolerance for temporary embarrassment. And until that tolerance expands, your income rarely will. I've often wondered something uncomfortable. Why do some men tolerate years of frustration, but can't tolerate 30 minutes of uncertainty? Why will someone endure being underpaid, overlooked, and quietly resentful, but avoid sending one risky email? At first glance, it looks irrational. But psychologically, it makes perfect sense. Because your brain is not designed for wealth, it's designed for survival. And survival prioritizes safety over expansion. Let's zoom in. Deep inside your brain is a structure called the amygdala. Think of it as your internal alarm system. It scans your environment constantly, asking one question: is this safe? If the answer is uncertain, it leans toward no. Starting something new? Not safe. Investing money? Not safe. Public failure? Definitely not safe. When that alarm activates, it triggers your HPA axis, your stress response system. Cortisol rises. Your heart beats faster. Your thoughts narrow. This is brilliant if you're running from danger. It's terrible if you're trying to build a business, because modern success requires repeated exposure to uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like threat. Now here's where evolution steps in. For most of human history, taking unnecessary risks was stupid. If you wandered too far from the tribe, you could die. If you challenged hierarchy recklessly, you could be exiled. If you gambled resources and lost, your family starved. Playing it safe wasn't weakness, it was intelligence. Caution was rewarded, conformity was rewarded, energy conservation was rewarded. The bold survived sometimes, the careful survived more often. So your nervous system inherited that programming. And in today's world, That ancient wiring quietly sabotages ambition, because building wealth demands behaviors that once looked reckless, standing out, challenging norms, risking status, delaying gratification. Your biology whispers, stay with the tribe, don't embarrass yourself, don't risk exile. But in the modern economy, exile looks like obscurity, and obscurity pays very little. Now let's talk about something subtle: cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the mental tension you feel when two beliefs clash. For example, I'm capable of more, but also I keep choosing comfort. That gap creates psychological pain, and the brain hates unresolved tension, so it resolves it the easiest way possible, not by changing behavior, but by changing narrative. Success is overrated. Money corrupts people. I don't need much to be happy. Again, some of that may be true, but sometimes it's protection. Because if you fully admit you're capable of more, then your inaction becomes harder to justify. And that threatens identity. Here's the twist most people never hear. The so-called weak man often has a highly sensitive nervous system. He feels risk deeply. He feels rejection deeply. He feels uncertainty intensely. That sensitivity in the wrong environment becomes avoidance. But in the right environment, it becomes perception, empathy, creativity, strategic thinking. The same brain that overthinks potential failure can also anticipate complex outcomes. The same man who fears embarrassment can become incredibly emotionally intelligent. He's not defective, he's dysregulated. His vagus nerve, the part of the nervous system that helps regulate calm and social engagement, may not be well trained. When stress rises, he shifts into fight, flight, or freeze more quickly than others. And freeze is common. Freeze looks like procrastination. Freeze looks like endless research. Freeze looks like I'll start next week. It's not laziness. It's a nervous system trying to avoid overwhelm. And once you see that, something shifts. Because now we're not talking about weak men. We're talking about men who never learned how to regulate discomfort. Men who confuse safety with stagnation. Men who believe confidence comes before action, when in reality, confidence is the result of surviving action. This is the paradox. You don't build courage and then take risks. You take small risks, and your brain updates its safety map. Through neuroplasticity, every survived discomfort rewires the system. Every awkward conversation that doesn't destroy you, every failed attempt that doesn't kill you, every public mistake that fades in a week, your brain slowly learns, oh, that wasn't fatal. And once uncertainty stops feeling like death, your capacity expands. So maybe the problem was never weakness. Maybe it was outdated survival software, Stone Age wiring in a digital world. And here's the empowering part. Software can be updated, but only if you're willing to tolerate the installation process. And yes, that process feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger. It's adaptation in progress. The man who stays broke is not cursed. He's cautious. The question is, will he remain ancient, or will he evolve?